Grab your pack and your radio. It's time to go hiking and hamming. How's it going? I'm Luke, A4H&H, hiking and hamming, and today we're going to go over how I installed the FTM-500 from Yaesu into my new vehicle, and also my initial thoughts on that radio and how it operates, and just some little things you might want to know, or at least from my experience so far. I'm not going to go very in depth on the radio itself. There's plenty of other videos that do that. It'll just be more a discussion of things that I've noticed and how I use it to this point. I haven't been through the menu system all the way. There's a lot of things I still have to set up on it, but I'll tell you what I think of it so far and what I've found interesting about it. So here we have the new rig, and this will be the new hiking and hamming Potomobile 2023 Toyota 4Runner. And we will start off by coming down here and popping the hood. And we'll walk around here and we'll start off with power, since hey, you got to have power to run the radio. So what I've done is I have run our 12-volt power directly off the battery, and of course ground side is over here on the frame ground, dual fused. We run back this way, and you'll notice there's a secondary wire that's running through, and that's for the Raptor lights that are on the front of the vehicle. And on 4Runners there is a grommet right here that takes you through the firewall. What I like to do, and I did this on my previous 4Runner as well, is, and I don't know how well you can see that, but that grommet is right back here, is I cut the center of the grommet out and then thread the wiring through that and replace the grommet in the firewall. That way that wiring isn't rubbing on the metal of the firewall. Now in my case, what I did is, we've been out. My 12-volt wiring is running up there. You can see the red wire. It comes down through here. I've got it running underneath in this tray where the vehicle system wiring is running, and that goes all the way back. It runs back behind the seat, and I apologize for the interior here, because the back is filled with POTA gear. Got a 791 in there. I might do a video on all that. I am going to definitely do a review on these chairs that we picked up over at REI, but we're not here for that today. We're here for this. And then this is the main body of the FTM-500. Have the power running up. Now I know a lot of people will put power poles on the end. I did, but I didn't. So what I've done is I've left the factory connector on there. You can see it right there. Normally I have this secured up with Velcro straps or hook and loop straps to this frame here. But what I'm using is just the adapter. There's an adapter that you can get that plugs right into that T connector, comes out into the power poles, and then I'm running power poles from there. So that way, if I ever want to sell the radio, it is still stock. And I know everybody generally wants power poles, but just in case, I'm leaving it this way. And what we have here, and you can see I've got it held up along with the power, and I've got to do a little more routing work on all this stuff to make it look a little better, is the cable going up to the control head. Now I ran it up the other side of the vehicle, and I'll show that in a minute. But I used the mount. Let me turn this in a way so that you can actually see what we got going here. I used the mount that came with the radio. The lever is right down here, so we can slide that right out. I don't want to go too far with it because I'm doing this one-handed, and I've got to flip that around to feed it through the metal here. And I will show you the bars that I used to secure this to my frame. Now, these Molly frames that I have in the back here, there's one there, there's one over on that side. These are from Cali Raised, and I'll put a link down in the description. And the reason I went with the Cali Raised is because most of these Molly panels that go in the windows that you find will stop right here at the bottom of the window, whereas these Cali Raised come on down. So that was ideal. Now, originally, I wanted to mount the body of the radio on the other side of this in this void. However, it's just a little bit too wide to go in there, so that wasn't going to work, and I wound up having to mount it right there. What I want to eventually do is either, now I'll probably wind up having to fabricate it myself, is some sort of a cage that I can attach here and here, so that it'll get a little protection on the body of the radio. Okay, so you can see my antenna. Yes, that is RG316, and that comes out. It feeds. I've got it feeding right here along the back side. You can see some Velcro there to hold it. I like to Velcro these things in so that they're just a little easier to access. In this case, it runs through here. I do want to put a very, very tiny little notch right here where this 316 feeds into this access panel. Through the access panel, and I will go ahead and pop it open. The 316 runs through the tail light assembly. We'll just pop this back in. And it comes out right here, runs up the back. It's just loose right now. It doesn't seem to affect anything, or hasn't so far. So that 316 comes up right through here. And hopefully you can see this as I'm holding up the camera well over my head. I can't really see the screen from here, but hopefully this comes out. And it goes to this NMO mount that attaches to the roof rack. This roof rack is from Sherpa. And after doing a lot of research, this is the one I decided to go with primarily because of the all stainless steel hardware. The frame itself is aluminum, but the hardware is stainless steel. And they do make that NMO antenna mount to fit on this rack. And we are going to the Comet, the 2X4S. Very popular antenna, I'm sure everybody knows. So it works great. And I'll come back in a minute with the rig expert and we'll take a look at that. Okay, so now let's check and see. We're going to unhook the coax here and break out the rig expert. Let's just, oh, there we go. Turn that on. Okay, and we are going to go to the ham setting there. And there you go. That's what we're looking like on 2 meters. So let's see what we look like on 70 centimeters. And I think that is pretty acceptable. We'll look at 2 meters one more time. There we go. I don't know how well you can see that. Let's see if we can get the camera just a little closer without any glare on it. So 2 meters and then 70 centimeters. So that's how we're looking on SWR. And coming up here, again, ignore the mess inside my, oh, what's on that water bottle? So ignore the mess inside the 4Runner. And the data cable going to the head, you can see it comes through here, is running underneath here. Same way, it's the same routing as the power cable, just up the opposite side. And then it comes up through here underneath this. In fact, I'll just pop this off and you can kind of see. There's the cable running right in that cableway there alongside the rest of the the vehicle's electronics. It comes up through here. You can see I've got it popped out again here. Again, this is one of those places where there's not a lot of tension, so it's not really being pinched. And it comes up, runs back here. And when I had the dash uninstalled, I had to pull the infotainment system out in order to install this particular mount that takes amps plates. It's from ICS, and of course built for, this particular model is built for the 5th gen 4Runners. So I wanted to mount it using amps. Previously I'd used a floor mount from Lido, however you pronounce it, that connects to the bolt on the, down here, the bottom of the seat. The head was sitting right about in this area right here, which was fine when I was driving by myself for the most part. However, I did have a tendency, if I was reaching over to get to the temperature control knob or some of the buttons on the infotainment system, I would hit it. Because it was magnetically mounted, the faceplate or the head unit was magnetically mounted to that, I would occasionally knock it off or something like that. And then when somebody else was riding here in the vehicle, if they reached across, say, to get to one of the cup holders in the console or something like that, or to change a station on the radio or whatever, it was easier for them to hit that control head. So it was convenient if it was just me, but it was kind of in the way when I had passengers. So I decided I wanted to get away from that. So I got this ICS amps plate mount and installed it. So that comes to the control head itself. And now I experimented with several different mounting options, or a few different, I won't say several, but a few different mounting options when I was putting this control head in. And I started off with the Lido mount, which this is actually the arm for it right here. But this is as far back, you can see here, and both these amps plates are mounted as far back as they can go on this ICS mount here. So what happens is, because of the depth of the head, it winds out hanging out a little further than I wanted it to. So at first with this arm, the Lido mount arm, which I'm going to use now, or it's in the position where I can mount my GoPro if I want to. I do have another mounting plate that I have not yet installed that will go over here, and that will be to hold a tablet for when I'm overlanding. But I don't have that in here yet. But this is the Lido base plate, and I swapped out the arm from Ram Mounts, the shorter arm, with the longer one from Lido, so I could bring that head back a little bit further. It's still not exactly where I'd like it. It sticks out a little bit too far for me. It's usable, it's not that big of a deal, but I tend to, when I'm steering and turning and my fingers come out, I tend to hit the head a little bit. Now I could move it a little more toward the center, but I kind of like laterally where this thing is placed, so I'm going to leave it there. But I do know that Yaesu has another head mount that's a solid piece of metal, and I'm thinking that if I put that right back here, that will allow this thing to come back so that it's basically the face of the radio is almost flush with the front of this mounting plate right here. So that's something I got to do and change out. So that's where I am on the mounting options. Now, one thing with this mount is that it did have a tendency to have little, a lot of vibration in it, which, can make it hard to focus on while you're going down the road if you need to glance over at the radio and change the repeater that you're on or change your frequency. So what I did is, and I'm going to roll this back, and we're going to, if I can get it here, I'm going to loosen this up and lift. What I did is, you'll see right there on the bottom, I put a little bit of adhesive back weather strip on the bottom because that rests just about dead onto the front of this plate, and that took out a lot of the vibration. Now, once I get the single piece metal mount from Yaesu, I don't think I'm going to need that. I think it will be perfectly placed, and I'm going to turn my volume down here so we don't get a bunch of APRS noise. So that's the one thing that I have left that I really want to do with this as far as the mounting options. I'm sure you want to know, and I wanted to talk about this too, my impressions so far of this radio. And I will say up front, I absolutely love it. There are a couple of things that I don't like. One is the lack of memory banks. I'd like to be able to separate my memories, or the repeaters that I have in memory, into banks so that I can have them in an order for areas in which I travel. So I would have one for the local area, and then one for when I'm going to my cabin in South Georgia, and one to when I'm going to my mother's house, things like that. It would just be easier for me to navigate that way. As it is, I got, I believe, 346 repeaters in here right now. So I have to do a considerable amount of scrolling to get to the one that I need, depending on where I am, especially when I'm kind of in those in-between regions. But I don't think that would be really solved really well by having banks. But having the banks would be handy as far as just organizing how my memories are laid out. Another thing, it's not a deal breaker, it's a minor annoyance, is the fact that while I love that the mic has an input right here on the head, I'd have been a lot happier if it had been on the left side of the head, because when I hang my mic up, and yes, I am going to move this mic hanger somewhere else once I get the head moved back, but it still kind of has the same issue, which is why I'm flipping the cord over the top and resting it up there, in that it hangs right down in front of the screen here. And what will happen, even if I take the mic out, because I've tried this, and I've set it somewhere just where it's sitting on the console, inevitably the mic cord is exactly on wherever my track is when I use Waze, which is my primary navigation when I'm driving. So, and there goes the repeater. So that is, again, it's not a deal breaker. It's something of a minor annoyance. So it is what it is. So I did come across one problem with this thing, and I'm pretty sure I did it myself. I think it was an operator error. Oddly enough, earlier today, I was watching Jason, Ham Radio 2.0's live stream with John Kruk about the APRS functionality on this particular radio. And what happened is, and I mentioned it in there, and I sent John Kruk an email explaining it. You know, I had said, hey, I had an anomaly. I'm putting it in a video. But the thing is I don't think it's a fault of the radio per se. I think it was an operator-induced condition. In other words, I did it. It's not anything with the radio, I don't believe. So while I was traveling this past weekend, I managed to lock the radio up. And by lock it up, what I mean is none of the knobs worked, none of the buttons worked, the touchscreen didn't work, nothing worked except when I keyed up on the hand mic, when I hit the PTT, K4H&H, the only thing that would happen is that LED would light up, the transmit LED would light up. Nothing would happen on the radio, no indication of transmit, the APRS quit beaconing, so nothing was working. Now, what happened was, what I believe happened is, at the time when that occurred, I was furiously spinning the main knob here to change repeaters. I mean, I had it going. So I think that's what did it. Instead of doing it at a normal speed like this, I was just whapping it, and it was going. And I think what happened is it was going so fast through there, it just overwhelmed the processor, the memory, and that caused it to lock up. And it was locked up to the point that I actually had to physically disconnect the 12-volt DC, reconnect it, and the radio came back on, and everything worked perfectly and has worked perfectly ever since. So, like I said, I'm 99.44% sure that is something that I did. So be forewarned when you're going through and you are changing your repeaters. Don't burn that thing out, like you're in the Indy 500. Don't make it look like a race car wheel when it's going around. Just take your time. Don't furiously spin the knob, and go whee with it like that, because chances are you're probably going to cause the thing to lock up like I did. So once again, this is Lou. making mistakes so you don't have to. Now, other than that, I really love this radio. A couple of reasons that I got it. One was the APRS functionality. As I start, I'm planning on trying to add some off-roading in. I mentioned that in a previous video. To get into some remote places. I've got a place right now that I'm looking at and researching so that I can go up really deep up into a particular park. It's actually a twofer. But the best access in there is Forest Service roads, and so I want to be able to take this radio up in there, or take the vehicle up in there and be able to ping on APRS just as a secondary safety measure. Now, before this radio came out, I was contemplating either an FTM-300 or FTM-400, and then of course the FTM-400 ceased to be produced. So I was looking around thinking maybe, well, I can pick up a used 400 or I can just get a 300. And then this radio dropped. And what sold me on it, and I am not one to go out and buy the latest, greatest radio as soon as it comes out. I don't have FOMO, fear of missing out on new radios. So what sold me on getting this radio as soon as I could get my hands on it was the front AESS speakers on it, the front firing speakers, because that eliminated, one, the bulk of having to figure out where I was going to mount a secondary speaker or an external speaker, running that additional wiring, all those considerations. So that took that out of the equation. So really all I had to do to get to the control head from the body was the one data cable, which, by the way, and I'm going to roll this around here, is running right up through here, popping out through the back. So that was a really easy run to do while I had the infotainment system pulled out so that I could mount the ICS bracket up there. But yeah, so I jumped on it and decided, yeah, this is an opportunity. I will go ahead and get one, and I did. And I love this radio. I do recommend it. If you're thinking about getting a new one, even if you're not interested in APRS, I would go with this thing just because of the fantastic sound that comes out of it. Yeah, I know that there is a great deal of, we're going to turn our volume down here and I'll let you hear what this radio sounds like. But the audio clarity is great. I think you'll really like this radio, even if you're not a fan of the APRS. Sure, it's got a couple of little things that are a little bit of annoyance, but you're not going to find the perfect radio, I don't think. And for my purposes, this thing works great. I highly recommend it. Love this radio so far. Like I said, there's still a lot of things I've got to get into. Obviously, one of the other downsides you're going to hear, or depending on your perspective, is it's a Yaesu and Yaesu menus. Got it. And I still have to go through and play with some more of these menus and set some things up on here. I haven't done that yet, like the priority groups and things like that. But so far, I love it, and I'm going to turn the volume up right here and let you listen to some of the local repeater talk.
One eternity later.
And of course, now they're not talking. Well, we will try to induce some talking. Okay, for H&H doing a radio demonstration. If I could get somebody here just so I can get a little bit of sample of audio.
Yeah, this is W9KOP. Where are you located?
Hey, good afternoon, W9KOP. I am up on Burning Tree Mountain right now.
Well, I'm in Pineville.
Roger. Yeah, I'm just doing a little bit of filming here and trying to demonstrate the sound quality on the FTM-500.
Sounds real good. You got good audio quality.
Roger that. Thank you much. Have a great day. It's K4H&H, and I'll be clear. So there you have it. The transmit audio just got a good report. You could hear the
That was crystal clear.
the receive audio, and crystal clear.
The only time it's clear is when you can see through it.
And like most repeaters, yeah, we got a bunch of jokers.
Okay, for H&H doing a radio demonstration, if I could get somebody here just so I can get a little bit of sampled audio.
This is W9KOP. Where are you located?
Good afternoon, W9KOP. I am up on Burning Tree Mountain right now.
So there you have it. That's a quick review of how I installed the FTM-500 in my Toyota 4Runner and my initial thoughts on the radio itself. Thanks for watching, and grab your pack and your radio, and let's go hiking in Hammond.